ALT. Just want to give you some quick background on the Scarlet Letter, Hawthorne, when the book was written, when the book is set. I am really aiming to keep this under 5 minutes. Cool. So moving into the Scarlet Letter, I'll send you these slides after so you have them if you want them. This is our gent, Nathaniel Hawthorne. Sorry, I'm kind of over him. The picture on the left is him as a young man. This is actually hanging in our National Portrait Gallery, so you can go down and see it in person when they're back open. And then the black and white picture is him towards the end of his life. Lived for 60 years, died right before the end of the Civil War. Can you imagine dying not knowing how that would resolve? Super central figure to American Romanticism. So reading the Scarlet Letter will be really representative of everything you've read so far. His ancestry, I'll show you his genealogical tree at some point. He was born in Salem, Massachusetts. He was born with his last name spelled Hathornes. He ended up adding a W to it because he wanted to distance himself from his ancestor, John Hawthorne, who was notoriously involved with the Salem witch trials. He worked at a custom house at ports in Boston and later Salem, so that's just where all of the goods are coming in, and Hawthorne is signing off on them, taxing them, etc. This will be important in a couple slides. Even though he's this super central figure to American Romanticism, he's also quite friendly with the Transcendentalists. So we talked about how the American Romantics have a much darker depiction both of human nature and of nature than the Transcendentalists do. This will be important because he is friends with a woman named Margaret Fuller, and he admired her so much as a thinker that he modeled Hester Prynne on her. So you're about to meet Hester in the opening chapters of the Scarlet Letter. We'll read an essay by Margaret Fuller right before you get to the final chapter of the Scarlet Letter, where you can really see Hawthorne modeling Hester on Margaret. So the Scarlet Letter. The subtitle, importantly, is A Romance. So Hawthorne himself is recognizing this as a kind of melodramatic story of sin and purity and the darkness within mankind and within communities. He published it in 1850, but it's set in the 1640s. They think roughly like 1642 to 1649 based on the historical references. In the Massachusetts Bay Colony, that's a Puritan settlement that would one day become Salem, Massachusetts. The opening chapter, the first 35 pages that I let you skip, is an introductory chapter called The Custom House, the speaker of which tries to make this story sound historical. He says he came across this beautiful embroidered scarlet A in the custom house, and that he then did all this research on Hester Prynne, who was renowned in the community for nursing the sick and the outcasts. But it's historical fiction. So even though it makes it sound more like realist, it's actually quite romantic. I would keep an eye, or I'll keep an eye on the footnotes. I think you might not have as many as I do, unfortunately, but there's a bunch of characters who are based on real witches and governors in Salem, the early Massachusetts Bay Colony. A couple notes on Puritans. I sent these to you last week. Just keep in mind that there's a whole bunch of different ways of being a Puritan. I think that we think of this as one movement that we kind of identify with the Massachusetts Bay Colony. But what they all have in common is this impetus to reform the Church of England, a disbelief in kings. If God is God, then kings shouldn't matter. We should have a direct connection with God. And so this is part of leaving a monarchical government. They align more with Hobbes than Locke in thinking that man is naturally sinful. They believe in unconditional election. They think that humans need God to keep us from reverting to natural savagery. And they believe that the Native Americans in this state of savagery are wicked, and that nature too in America, especially as it manifests, is also wicked. After this, I give you a couple slides full of discussion questions. Again, I'll send you this as a PDF. These might be helpful as you read the first 3 chapters of the Scarlet Letter. Be in touch with questions, and I'll see you soon.